I read recently a figure in, I believe it was an Economist magazine report, that interestingly enough, one of the measures that economists who study inequality use, a very curious measure, is how long the rich could hire the poor. That's a very striking figure, and the figure that I thought was quite interesting was that a few years ago, the 600 richest people in the world could hire the 1 billion poorest, 1/5 of the population, for 1 year. And that is the longest period of employment of that largest number of people ever. So despite everything that we're doing, and despite the artificiality of the figures from the increased Chinese and Indian population, why in the world is the inequality gap getting worse?
I would not say that there is an artificiality there, because these two countries and people in the two countries are indeed getting better off. We have to realize that both India and China, particularly India, are still fairly poor countries. India's ratio between average income in the UK and India is 12 to 1. So an average British citizen is 12 times richer than an average Indian citizen. So the gaps are huge. However, these two countries are increasing at a fast pace, so they're actually becoming less different or less poor compared to the rich world than they were 10 years ago. So it is not artificial. However, what you were saying before about the fact that actually some aspects of global inequality are getting worse is absolutely true. The statistic that you mentioned of how many people would rich people be able to employ simply from their income without actually making a smallest dent into their fortune it's incredible. It's extremely high. Let me give you, for example, another statistic. If you take the entire population of the world and then you line them up from the poorest to the richest, and then you take 1/2 of mankind, and they will have only received about 6% of global income. So 1/2 of mankind receives 6%, and then you look at the very, very top of the income distribution, and the highest 1% receives 13% of total income. So that the highest 1% receives twice as much as 3 billion people. So this is actually staggering. So these gaps between the top and the bottom have now become much larger than ever.
And the reason for that is?
Well, the reason for that is that the world has grown reasonably well over the last 20 years. Most of the gains have been concentrated really among the top income categories. And of course, India and China or Indonesia and a few other countries that have done well. But large chunks of the world, like Africa, South America, Eastern Europe, have either fallen behind or stayed put where they were. And that has created this really very, very large differences in incomes.